Welcome to the Ruth MacFit Podcast. I am very happy to be here chatting to you as always, and it's lovely and sunny here in Devon. Now, I did actually start recording this podcast on Friday. It's Monday now. And at the beginning of that podcast, I was saying to you how there had been points during the week where I'd been questioning whether I should go and do the Great North Run because my back had been a bit twingy. I hadn't been feeling 100%, and I hadn't specifically trained for the run anyway. So should I go? Shouldn't I go? And I was telling you that actually I reminded myself that my intention is always to do a run and come back feeling better than I did when I went out, and that I couldn't get upset about the results I didn't get from the work I didn't do. So I was excited about going to Newcastle and doing the run, approaching it with this different and improved mindset. And I kind of got my head around that. And the reason I was chatting about it is because there had been points where I'd found myself saying, well, maybe you will be able to get sub 2 hours. And that I'd had to say to myself, we're not doing time, Ruth. We're not aiming for a time. You haven't trained specifically. Don't start adding in little things like that. Anyway, during that podcast, I then had a phone call from the hospital to say that my youngest son was going to be going in for surgery on Monday. He's going to be having general anaesthetic and I need to have him there for 12:30 today. My mind went, okay, that's fine. I can do the Great North Run anyway. And then I thought, can I? Does he need me around on the Sunday? And I found myself just feeling a bit overwhelmed by what do I do? What's the right decision? Not really knowing what to do. And then I was questioning whether I was just using it as an excuse because I'd been talking about not going anyway. And maybe I was just doing that. So I got a cup of tea and I went and sat down and I took a deep breath and I thought, hang on a second, right, let's think about this logically. I can go and do the Great North Run. Absolutely. It's on Sunday and I can be back in time. However, well, going to the Great North Run from Devon is like a 7-hour drive, not taking into consideration any stops and the fact that we have an electric car, we'll need to charge that and so on, not taking into consideration also the traffic after finishing the Great North Run. So we would drive up on Saturday and that would have been okay, stay the night, do the Great North Run, and then suddenly there's this pressure afterwards to get home. And I know that I'd be worrying about traffic and not getting back in time because we wouldn't have been back until midnight anyway. And I would have been worried about anything that had gone wrong there, if I got injured on the run, anything that would have happened. I'm suddenly quite far away and we need to be home. So this was all on my mind. And therefore, I did decide not to do it. But because there was still that niggle about, is it an excuse? Am I using this because I'm just like, don't want to have a go at the half marathon? I decided not to go with the old all or nothing mindset of if I can't do it all, then I'll do nothing, and instead decided that I would do my own little Great North Run in Devon. I would do a half marathon. I would lace up my shoes around the same time and head out and do a 13.1 miles here. And that is what I did. So I am proud of myself for still going and doing what I could. And I'm also pleased I didn't go to Newcastle because I am aware this morning that I'm feeling in a much better place than I would have been if I hadn't had that sleep. And it feels like this has come at a good time with regards to the podcast because this podcast is about all or nothing thinking. And I think that is a good example of it. And I want to start by asking you some questions that link nicely to all or nothing thinking. So you don't need to write any answers down, but just be listening and thinking about whether any of these things do apply to you. Do you find yourself saying, I'll start again on Monday whenever things don't go to plan? Do you feel guilty if you eat something off plan and then think that you've ruined everything? Do you skip a workout altogether if you don't have time for the full session? Do you go all in during the week but find the weekends unravel everything? Or maybe you've tried diet after diet only to feel like nothing ever sticks. And if you are nodding along to even one of these, then chances are that you have experienced the all or nothing mindset too. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And of course, I have been there, and it's something I do still have a conversation about regularly with myself. And obviously this weekend, when I couldn't do everything, I did choose to do something, but there were times where it wasn't like that. I remember one time in particular where I was going to be heading away. We were going to be catching a flight, so we were going up to London in the afternoon. And I had decided that I could fit in a gym workout before I went. And the gym workout, I mean in the gym in the local town. It was very unrealistic of myself to think that I could fit that in. But I hadn't really thought it through. It was a certain day of the week, and I do my gym sessions on those days. So therefore, it was going to happen. And as the clock ticked closer to that time, I could feel it slipping away. And at that point, I could have said, okay, I'm not going to have time to go to the gym, so I'll do a short circuit at home. So I feel like I've done something. I didn't do that, did I? No, I didn't go to the gym. And then I felt guilty about not going. And that is all or nothing thinking in a nutshell. Maybe you've done something similar. I know that I used to do this as well. Decide I was going to start a diet on Monday. So on Sunday, I would tidy up and eat all the chocolate in the house because I wouldn't be able to eat that on Monday. And then there's that feeling of doing really well all week and then hitting Friday and thinking, oh, well, I've blown it now. Might as well give up. And I know that I'm not the only one that have experienced these things because I have this conversation so many times. I see it when people sign up to me and it says, I want to move away from the all or nothing thinking. And that is what the no crap cake method is all about. But actually, I had a lovely client in her last check-in, so it was last week, and this is what she said, and I'm going to read her words. I have been really trying to fight the all or nothing thinking, and for the most part have been winning. I was feeling a bit fed up with myself for not giving enough consistent effort and for feeling that I was letting myself down a bit. But then, if I'm being kinder to myself, I do recognize that it's really very difficult to make habit changes when you're out of normal routine, away on holiday, etc. So actually, I'm happy with the progress that I've made, and I'm excited to see what September will bring. Now, the best part about all of this is that in the 2 weeks between her check-ins, when she was busy and out of routine, she'd actually lost nearly 3 pounds anyway. So the results were happening, but her mindset was telling her that she wasn't trying hard enough simply because she felt that she should or could have been doing more. And this is where the all or nothing trap can feel a bit dangerous, I guess, because we don't even see our own progress. And I love that this client has actually managed to reflect on this, take it into consideration, and clearly hasn't been falling into the all or nothing trap because she has been doing what she can and she can see it for what it is. But in psychology, it's actually called dichotomous thinking, which makes it sound really fancy, doesn't it? But really, it just means that we see things in black and white, all good or all bad, success or failure. Our brains love certainty because it feels simple. But in real life and reality, especially in health, fitness and fat loss, everything actually happens in the grey area in between, that middle ground. And the problem is when we think like that, is it's incredibly hard to stay consistent because the moment that something doesn't go perfectly, we feel like we failed. One of my lovely one-to-ones had been struggling with fat loss for a long time before we started working together. And what I noticed is that whenever things got a bit hard, she'd go quiet and her progress would stall. So when we dug a little deeper, there was a lot of guilt around food and a huge reliance on scale weight. So if she ate something that was a bit more indulgent, say some cake, she'd then feel guilty about it. And the next day, it might be that the scale would spike a little, which is completely normal. Our weight fluctuates for so many reasons that have nothing to do with gaining body fat. And actually, I've had so many women say to me, oh, I just have to look at a piece of cake and I gain a few pounds. You might gain some weight, but you're not gaining body fat. You have to eat considerably more than that to gain a pound of body fat. But what can happen if we've eaten a few more carbs is that we can hold a bit of water, or it might just be coincidental that we have natural normal fluctuations anyway. But with my lovely one-to-one, this would be proof that it wasn't working, that she'd ruined it. And she'd be giving up then until the next day or the next week until she felt ready to start again. And that is the cycle of all or nothing thinking. And from her perspective, she felt like she was working really, really hard, but not getting anywhere. And she's not alone. And research shows that rigid all or nothing dieting, where foods are either allowed or off limits, is linked to disordered eating and worse long-term outcomes. Whereas flexible approaches, where all foods can fit, do better over time. So if this sounds familiar, you are not alone. And really, awareness is the first step to breaking this cycle. So what does all or nothing actually look like in everyday life? I want to go through some of the common signs. One of the most obvious places it shows up is going to be with exercise, like I nearly fell into. It might be for you that you skip a session altogether if you can't do the full version. I don't have time for the gym today, so I'm not going to do anything. And years ago, I had my first glimpse at how powerful short routines can be. I actually started these with my sister. She was carrying a bit of extra weight, and that wasn't actually the reason that she embarked on this health and fitness journey. It was because she'd been suffering from severe back pain as well. She recognized that losing a bit of weight would help her back and that also she needed to get stronger. But the thought of doing a workout just felt a bit overwhelming, and she'd got it in her head that she didn't like working out. So instead, we started with Daily A and Daily B, and I still use these today, which I'll talk about in a moment. But it was 3 or 4 simple exercises. She would aim for 3 rounds, but if she didn't have time or the energy, then she could just do 1 and she would know that it still counts. She normally did 3 rounds, but she knew that. She got so much stronger, and it wasn't because she loved the gym, it was because she did something consistently. And that then went on to build her confidence, and it made her want to move more. And I still use this with clients. I've got my lovely one-to-one Kate, who's been doing these style of short sessions as well. And she's seen big changes in her strength, in body composition. In fact, I have just done a check-in with her just now, and she was saying that she actually fell over. She wasn't drunk or anything like that. She just fell off a chair randomly, and she actually counted it as a win because she would have struggled to get up off the floor before, but she said it was easy now, and she was able to still hold the food that she was holding. And her strength is coming from doing those 3 consistent exercises each day. And in the app, we've got a section called pajama workouts, which are basically ones that fit around our routine that we can do in our pajamas, that don't have to take a great deal of time. You see, the thing is that consistency is always going to trump intensity. If you're doing all in once every now and then when you've got time, that is never going to be as good as consistently doing something. And this, of course, is backed up by research as well. Even 10 minutes of brisk walking improves our health markers. The whole "it only counts if it's big" mindset just isn't true. And another big red flag in this area is nutrition. It's that whole "I've blown it now, so I might as well eat everything" mentality. I used to do this with cake because I felt like some foods were off limits. So instead of just cutting a piece of cake and eating it and enjoying every bite, I used to take tiny slithers throughout the day because I felt it was something I shouldn't have. And by the end of the day, I had eaten way more than 1 slice, and I hadn't enjoyed any of it. None of it left me feeling satisfied, which is where the whole no crap cake condition came from. Thinking less often, but more enjoyable. Sit down with a proper piece of cake, enjoy every bite, and then move on. It's just cake, and it's something we want to actually enjoy. But it also applies to wine, meals out, and even how we use our time and energy. It's choosing mindfully and not feeling guilty. And then the all or nothing mindset also creeps in with the weight loss patterns that we follow. It could be that we're really strict during the week, over restrict, perhaps. And then on Friday, we just want wine or cake, and suddenly it's fuck it, I've blown it. Monday comes, another restart, and it's a pattern we continue to follow. One of my members actually calls this the "fuck it, it's Friday" feeling, and she's tackling it using tools like the no crap cake condition and stepping away from the all or nothing thinking, and she's absolutely smashing it. Another one of my members, and actually I did a reel about this on Friday, but she is approaching it on a Friday. She does what she calls fast Fridays, where she would have used to have got a takeaway. She now has a condition on a Friday where they have a home-cooked meal, but it's got to be something quick. It might be something that they can just pop in the oven or the air fryer, a stir fry where you're buying the pre-cut stir fry veg and so on. But whatever she has, it's quick. It's called Fast Friday. And the all or nothing thinking doesn't only affect fat loss, it can hold you back from building muscle too. I remember, training for years consistently, but because my eating wasn't as consistent, my results didn't reflect my effort. I did have muscle, just I was working hard for what I had. And once I started fueling properly, eating enough protein, spreading it across through the day in my meals and so on, my body composition just changed. Protein and energy balance do matter, and consistency here makes a big difference as well. And finally, it can make weight maintenance feel chaotic. Some days you eat very little, other days you eat loads, and it feels totally out of control. You might not even feel like you know what normal looks like to you anymore. Our bodies like routine. Research in chrononutrition shows irregular eating is linked with poorer metabolic health. So we can think of it a bit like our circadian rhythm, that sleep cycle we have. Consistency helps appetite regulation and weight maintenance. So whether it's exercise, food, fat loss, or muscle gain, the signs are there. And the truth is that this mindset doesn't just stop with health. It spills over into all areas, business, relationships, and self-care as well. Now, these might seem fairly small, skipping a workout, picking at some cake, restarting on a Monday. But when we are living in this pattern for months or years, or if you're in midlife now, it might feel like you've done this for the whole of your adult life, the impact is going to go far beyond one missed session or one weekend of overeating. The all or nothing cycle leaves real marks on our health, our mindset, and even how our bodies function. So the first impact is that yo-yo dieting, going all in, losing weight quickly, feeling pretty smug, it's working, woo! But then life happens, the routine isn't sustainable, and the weight comes back on. And actually, we can feel like we just need to repeat that cycle. We can fall into the trap of saying, oh, that's the diet I need to go on because that's the one that worked before. That's something that I used to say. I used to be like, right, okay, I know what to do when I need to lose weight because I've done it before there. Now we might gain a little bit of weight here and there. Kind of happens, even if we have done it in a sustainable way. But if you're constantly losing a lot of weight and then gaining a lot of weight, maybe you need to look at the approach you've been taking. Studies do show that 80 to 95% of people who lose weight on restricted diets regain it within a few years. And the Biggest Loser is probably the most extreme example of this. I don't know if you've watched the documentary, but even if you haven't, it might be that you watched a show where contestants were pushed into hours of daily exercise and very low-calorie diets. They lost huge amounts of weight in a very short time. They would stand on the scales in their weekly weigh-in and it would be like, doot, 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 and they'd lose double digits each week. And we'd look on with awe and think this was incredible. But when researchers followed up with them, and I didn't know this, 6 years later, almost all of them had regained their weight. There was only one that didn't. And this is the part that astounded me. Their metabolism hadn't recovered. So on average, they were still burning around 500 fewer calories a day than you would expect for someone of their body size. Even those who regained the weight didn't see their metabolism bounce back. Only one contestant managed to keep most of the weight off, but they had to live in near constant restriction and extreme exercise just to hold steady. I just had no idea of that impact it had on them. And this tells us two things. First, extremes do work in the short term. But second, and most importantly, is that they can backfire in the long term. Our body fights back, metabolism can slow down, hunger hormones can increase, and maintaining results becomes near impossible. Yet for years, this was marketed as inspiration. And I think it's no wonder that so many of us have internalized the belief that going all in is the only way to get results. And then beyond weight regain, the toll shows up elsewhere too. In exercise, it often means overtraining, injuries, or burnout. With food, it can lead to undereating, low energy, and nutrient gaps. I know this firsthand because when I became ill with rheumatic fever, initially I blamed missed antibiotics. I'd been to the doctors with a sore throat and I wasn't given antibiotics, and it did turn out to be strep throat. Yes, antibiotics would have stopped the autoimmune reaction, but what I didn't consider was why I got to that point in the first place. I was all in with everything. I didn't listen to my body. I piled on more. I was a yes person. It was like, fine, yes, of course, I'll do that. I was always pushing, always reacting, never recovering. If I had a phone call asking me to do something, I would say yes without even considering my own time and energy. And that way of living left me exhausted and vulnerable to getting ill. It's definitely taken time to develop a calmer attitude, to pause, to choose instead of react, and to recognize recovery is non-negotiable. Even this past week where I've been trying to make decisions about the Great North Run, I've had to have conversations just to double check that I'm not just reacting, to make sure that I am making decisions that work for me and my family. But there's also that mental load that comes with all or nothing thinking, that guilt and shame after people fall off the wagon and then they feel like a failure because the scales have jumped up one day. Believing you're someone who just can't stick to it. You don't have the motivation or the willpower. That constant loop really chips away at our self-belief. And I've had so many women tell me that they've tried everything and nothing works. But what they'd really tried was every version of an all or nothing approach. And it's no wonder that they felt broken. And this doesn't really stop at health. In business, it looks like working non-stop until burnout, then doing nothing. In self-care, it might be skipping the small things because you can't do them perfectly. Think skincare routine or journaling or whatever. But the impact isn't just physical. It's that cycle of pressure and guilt and inconsistency that makes life harder than it needs to be. The exhaustion that we can feel isn't just physical, it can be mental, and it can be because of this as well, that inner turmoil. It really is no wonder that so many of us feel stuck. That cycle of guilt, burnout, weight regain, and frustration is exhausting. So I think the real question we need to ask is, if it hurts us this much, why are we keeping on doing it? Why does this all or nothing thinking have such a hold on us? And I think a big part of this comes down to the beliefs we hold about ourselves. It might be that you've said, I'm just someone who can't lose weight, or if I'm not all in, it doesn't work. I have to eat this low calories or I'm not going to lose anything. We think we are the exception to any other rule out there. And these thoughts become self-fulfilling. We expect to fail. So when everything goes off track, we stop trying. Then there's the perfectionism. Many of us grew up believing success meant doing things perfectly, aiming for gold stars, A grades, getting every box done. And I think this carries on into how we approach health as well. Add into this, and I think this is very important, the culture of instant gratification. We have next day delivery, 6-week transformations, binge watching any show that you want now, and extremes feel very appealing. They work fast until they don't. And I think a lot of this isn't our fault. We've been conditioned by diet culture. In the 90s and early 2000s, the goal was size 0, which is a UK 4. And for me, with my frame, that was never going to happen. But in my late teens, I did sit a bit too thin. So I'd been a bit the other side in my early teens and I was sitting too thin. And I'd go into Boots to jump on the scales in there. And I would be, I'm ashamed to admit, happy if it said underweight, because that was the goal, right? You couldn't open up a magazine without seeing heroin chic on there, the Kate Moss era, etc. And I think looking back, it is shocking how normalized it was. And I'm very grateful that we've since shifted towards celebrating strength over skinny. I didn't know at the time how good strong could feel. And the rugby player woman, is it Alona Maya? I'm saying her name wrong, but I'm sure you know who I mean. She put up a post about this a little while back, and she was so right. It was somebody saying, nothing feels as good as skinny feels, or nothing looks as good as skinny feels, or whatever like that. And she went, oh, I disagree. Have you tried strong? And actually, strong feels so much better. But I do have a slight worry that we are drifting back again, perhaps because of weight loss drugs becoming more accessible. My hope is that anyone using them also focuses on strength and nutrition so that they feel capable and well and good in themselves, not just thin. And of course, it wasn't just in magazines. We saw extremes glorified on TV too, with things like The Biggest Loser that I've mentioned already. That idea of inspiration through punishment, people dropping massive amounts of weight under extreme conditions. Looking back, it's clear this wasn't a celebration of health, it was entertainment built on extremes. And it reinforced the belief that unless you were all in, you weren't really trying. And I think this is the danger of looking at those transformation pictures that you see that coaches put up online. It shows you what people have achieved in 6, 8, however many weeks. It shows you a snapshot in time. It doesn't show you how they feel, how sustainable it is, and whether they regain that weight. And it's actually one of the reasons that when I created the no crap cake method and I was thinking about how to do it, that I didn't do a 6-week program or an 8-week program or a 10-week program, because health shouldn't be for the length of a program. It shouldn't be just to lose weight in that time. I wanted it to be something you could come and you could do it at a high level. You can push for more when you can, but to understand that we want to create habits that we want to keep long term. So when you find yourself wondering why you can't stick to something, just know that it's not because you're broken. It's because you've been taught that extremes are the answer, and extremes will always set us up to fail. But the good news is that once you understand where this mindset comes from, you can start to challenge it, and you don't need extremes to make progress. In fact, you'll get further when you do the opposite. The first step is absolutely going to be awareness, simply just noticing those all or nothing thoughts like, I'll start again on Monday, or if I can't do the full workout, I won't bother. That is progress in itself. Awareness gives you a pause button. So instead of reacting automatically, you can then reflect and ask, what happened here? What can I learn from this? There is no failure, only feedback, remember? And like the lovely client I mentioned at the beginning, who had started to feel a little bit annoyed with herself because of consistency, she was then able to go back and go, oh, hang on a second, that's all or nothing coming in then. From this, it's about flexibility, right? We've already talked about this with workouts, the short routines that still make a difference. And with food, where sitting and enjoying a proper slice of cake beats picking all day. And the principle is the same. Something is always going to be better than nothing. And choosing mindfully always beats choosing out of guilt or reacting. And to make that easier in practice, I would encourage you to use tools like non-negotiables or minimum standards. I did do a full podcast on this, which I'll link in the show notes. But those are the small things that we can do consistently, even on our hardest and busiest days. If you look at them, you might think, wow, that's too easy. But they're not. They just keep you doing something. Think of them as flexible backups instead of those rigid plans that can fall apart when life gets in the way. And underpinning all of this is self-compassion. Here, the research is very clear. People who treat themselves with kindness instead of constant criticism are more consistent over the long term. Pair that with small, repeatable habits, and the compound effect can take over. The little things you do often matter far more than the big things that you do occasionally. Now, I'm not going to pretend that this is all very easy, because at first it can feel uncomfortable because your brain is used to swinging between those extremes. But every time that you do choose differently, even in a very small way, you're proving to yourself that you can do it. And over time, those small choices really do start to add up, and you start to feel calmer, more consistent, and you stop swinging between all in and all out. It's not about flipping a switch, it's about practicing. And the more you practice, the easier it gets. To finish off here, I want you to know that the all or nothing mindset is very common. It shows up in exercise, food, fat loss, muscle gain, and in life. It keeps us looping to go all in, burn out, feel guilty, start again. And you are not broken. You are not lazy. You don't lack willpower. You were just conditioned to believe that extremes are the only way to get the results that you want. And once you see that you can choose differently, it is going to start with that awareness, then reflection without judging yourself, being kind. Go with the non-negotiables. Make it about choices over reactions. Practice those and you're going to feel calmer and more consistent and more in control. So 2 questions to take with you. Firstly, where do you notice all or nothing thinking showing up the most in your life? What's one small, flexible thing that you can choose to do today or this week instead of going all in or all out? And then come and find me on Instagram at Ruth MacFit. Let me know how you are getting on. Send me a message. And if you want to join us in the no crap cake method, where we are rebelling against the all or nothing thinking, then head to www.ruthmacfit.com. Or, like I said, you can come over to Instagram and ask me any questions. And finally, thank you so much for joining me today. I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I will look forward to chatting to you again next time. Goodbye.